Well, hey out there, how are you guys doing? So, figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a break and come to you with another case. I have been doing a lot of research about this case. It's not really well known. Like, I had a hard time finding a lot of information on this case, but it really hits home because it happened right in Whigham, Georgia. Those of you that are not really familiar with Whigham, let me tell y'all, there's not a lot to it. Whigham's a pretty small place. Now, I mean, it's big because there's a lot of land and a lot of farms and things like that, but it's just not a hop in town, I guess you would say. Like, there's not a lot over there. But it's, it's a nice little wholesome area. And sadly, there was a double murder case that happened over there in 1997. And that's the case that we're going to be talking about today. Just to give you a little bit of a backstory on some of the people that are involved in this case, we're going to start with a guy named Roy Bridges, okay? So Roy Bridges, he was born in July of 1937, and he was born to Willie and Daisy Bridges. And he had a pretty big family. Like, he had a lot of siblings. I couldn't find the exact number because the records were some of them were hard to read because they were from so long ago. But he was one of the youngest of his siblings. And he ended up going on once he got to be an adult, and he married a girl named Marcella Gail Whipple. She was also known of as Marcella. She was also known of as Gail, and she was also known of as Marcy. So this girl's got a lot of aliases. I'm not really sure what happened in the marriage, but shortly after they got married, they were already getting divorced. They were only married for about 2 years, and then they got divorced. So Roy goes on to meet and marry JoAnn Ulmer of Whigham. Now, they end up getting married in 1973 in Tallahassee, where they also moved and lived. And JoAnn, she was born in November of 1933, and she was born in Whigham to Joe and Christine Ulmer. Now, her life, it was really hard to find a lot of information out about her as a person, but I know that she was just, from what I could read and find out, like, she was just a very good person. She was very close to her mom. She, was just an all-around good gal. And like I said, after they got married, JoAnn and Roy, they ended up living in Tallahassee from 1973 to the time of JoAnn's death in 1997. So while living in Tallahassee, they had a lot going on for them. Roy, he actually owned a pretty successful tree business, and it was called Bridges Tree Service. While he was doing his tree business and had his own little company going and it was being successful, JoAnn, she was a veteran state employee, and she actually worked as a secretary to the juvenile justice secretary at the time, and his name was Calvin Ross. So she was, she had a pretty good job, and I mean, I'm pretty sure that financially, that was a very well-paying job as well as benefit-wise. And, she'd been there for a really long time. So, that was good for them. They just, all around, hardworking people, had a lot going for them. And JoAnn's mom, Christine, she lived in Whigham, Georgia, which, like I said, is where the murders took place. JoAnn's dad sadly passed away about 2 years before the murders happened. And she would still visit her mom, and I'm guessing that those visits probably increased some after her dad died, because she would go and visit her mom, and sometimes she'd even stay with her, like, over the weekends and things like that. They were very close. But JoAnn and Ray had 2 children that I know of. There may have been a previous child that Roy had, but if he did, I could not find much information. But they did have 2 children. They had a set of twins, and the twins were about 23 years old at the time of the murders. And sadly, that family, they've been through enough. Like, I feel really bad for those boys because they not only lost their mother and their grandmother in this tragic story, in this tragic case, but they also lost their dad in a way. So, I'm not going to actually mention or note their names because I don't feel like it's relevant for the case, and I feel like they deserve peace at this point. There's no need in them having to relive such a tragedy. I mean, they've gone through enough. So we're going to kind of move from there to the day that the murders took place. All right. The murders actually took place between December 26th, that night, to December 27th. And the actual date that's listed in all of the documents and on their death certificates and things is December 27th. So JoAnn went to stay with her mom, Christine, in Whigham for the weekend after Christmas. Like I said, it was the 27th. That Christmas actually fell on a Friday. So she just went to stay the whole weekend with her mom. And during that time, she actually, was by herself with her mom. It was just the two of them in the home. Well, an unfortunate series of events took place that evening. JoAnn was found severely beaten, and she had a butcher knife actually lodged in her chest. And authorities found her mom, Christine, upstairs with her trachea cut open. Like, just absolutely heartbreaking. But both victims were already deceased by the time the authorities did find them. And on the same day of the murders, Roy Bridges, because they always question the spouse. And so obviously investigators wanted to talk to Roy and find out what was going on, what he knew, if he was a part of this. And Roy Bridges, let me tell you a little bit about him. It was thought at first that this was just a horrible, violent robbery, okay? And as the investigators were looking through the home, they just couldn't find anything that was missing. It didn't make sense that it was a robbery, even though it was almost like it was staged to look that way. But there was nothing missing from the home. You would think that things would be turned over, things would be gone through, and that type of stuff just wasn't the deal. So investigators were like, this is fishy. Let's talk to the husband. So once that happened, Roy, just to give you a little insight of what kind of mindset this husband was, I mean, here's his wife of over 20 years. And the day he finds out that JoAnn has been murdered, he contacts JoAnn's employer to find out about the financial benefits that are payable to him about, once her death occurs. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that's a huge red flag to me. Give it a day. I don't know. Maybe a couple. Why would you, that just seems so insensitive. I just don't understand. Emotionally, how can you even function enough to make a call like that the day you find out that your wife's been murdered? But that's what he did. He, like I said, he was a real winner. And it was later said that Roy told a relative that he was anxious to settle JoAnn's estate because he needed that money. Y'all, if that ain't red flags, I don't know what is. If I was that relative that he told me to, I probably would have slapped him. I'd have been like, dude, are you freaking kidding right now? Your wife just died. What is wrong with you? I don't get it. But investigators questioned Roy, and they asked where his whereabouts were. And so he ended up claiming that he was at a hunting cabin with a hunt club in, and I'm going to try to pronounce this right, Opelika, I think is how you say it. I'm going to write it across the screen so you guys can see it. But he claimed that he was in this Alabama town. And once investigators looked into it, they discovered that that was a lie. They discovered that he had never checked into the club. Well, once he realized that they had found him in a lie, he later goes to say, well, it wasn't that I stayed at the club. I ended up staying at a hotel down the road from the club. And, it just, big liar. Anyway, so he said from 3 p.m. on the 26th to 5 a.m. on the 27th that that's where he was. Like, he was in Alabama. Yeah. So cell phone records, though, them little bad boys, they come in handy in moments like this. And little Roy, he made a boo-boo. He ended up making a call at 10 p.m. on the night of the murders from his cell phone. When he did that, his cell phone pinged off of a tower, and they were able to find the cell phone records that showed where he was at that time. And he was only about 40 to 50 miles northwest, I think is what it said, of where the murders occurred at that time. Yeah. I don't think he was really thinking this through if he was trying to make it look like, I don't understand. Like, I don't know where his mind process was at. Like, maybe he just didn't understand technology. I don't know. I mean, it was 97, so I'm trying to piece in my mind, like, how that must have went down. But they called him in yet another lie. And so once they realized that, and they were building a case against Roy, they found out some more juicy information that Roy had been a little, shady about. They found out that right before the murders, Roy had begun an adulterous affair. With who? You ask, with who? Well, it was with Marcy, a.k.a. Marcella, a.k.a. Amarella, a.k.a. Gail, whatever you want to call her. He was having an affair with his ex-wife, Marcy. And not only was he having an affair, he done asked this girl to marry him again. And so all of this happened before the murders, okay? Let me tell y'all about how just completely crazy this guy is, or how, I don't want to call people stupid, but some of the things that this guy, just in this trail of evidence, I'm just like, what? God, this guy just, like, he needs to be in prison for sure. I mean, I don't know. So after his arrest, while he's awaiting trial, he ends up going and talking to one of his cellmates, and he's like, hey, would you help me? I need to kill 2 of the state witnesses. And if you could help me with a solid alibi, I would appreciate that. Like, mind blown. Because you can trust people in jail because they're criminals too. Yeah. So Ray also asked a female friend of his to stage an adulterous account, like an adulterous scene with Marcy's husband, because he thought in his mind that this would make for an easier divorce, and it would also be more lucrative for Marcy, like she could get some money out of the deal, and they could go get married, and they could live happily ever after. Right. That's not how it went down, just so y'all know. So let's talk a little bit about the investigation itself. 3 different witnesses testified that after Roy's arrest, he told them that he had killed his wife and his mother-in-law. Now, originally he tried to say that it must have just been a break-in that went wrong. That obviously that's what happened. It's just unbelievable. One witness, who was also incarcerated with Roy, actually testified that Roy told him that he'd cut one of the women's throats and that he'd beaten the other one, and that he had disposed of the murder weapons in the nearby Flint River. He also said that Ray told him that he was receiving around $200,000 in insurance proceeds because of the death of his wife. I could say a lot, but I'm not going to. We're just, Roy, what are you thinking? I'm just not happy with this Roy guy. Like, I don't like him. I really don't like this dude. So another witness who also testified that had also been incarcerated with Roy, he testified that Roy had told him that he had killed his wife and mother-in-law using a slapjack and a knife. Now, I'm going to put an example here of what a slapjack is. And basically, it's described as a strap or a thong that is filled with lead. So, I mean, I think most of us have, I'm trying to put into, like, let you guys understand what it would feel like to be hit with basically a bag of legs. legs. A bag of legs. No, a bag of lead. Yeah, so I just, anyway, so he told this other guy that that was what he had used, and a knife. Another inmate testified that Roy told him that he had planned the hunting trip as a ruse to, throw off police, and he ended up going to his mother-in-law's house instead, where JoAnn let him in. Once he was inside, he hit JoAnn in the head, he went upstairs, and he killed his mother-in-law, Christine. And, Ray said that he staged the scene to look like a robbery, and that he would be receiving insurance money because of his wife's death. Now, all that stuff that I just told y'all that these inmates said, this was not something that was released to the public yet. Most of these details were still private. No one really knew about it. So there was no doubt that it came from Roy, sorry, not Ray. If I said Ray before, I'm sorry. It's Roy. It's Roy. But, apparently, Roy was in prison just being like, hey, y'all, guess what? Guess what I did? Hey, guess what I did? Let me tell y'all where I put the weapon. Let me tell you how I did it. Let me tell you about where my alibi's wrong. I don't know if he just had a speaker hollering it across the floor or what. But, he was just apparently telling everybody he was proud of himself. And the fact that he even thought that he was going to get away with this, I just do not understand. What an idiot. But most of the information that those inmates came forward with was not public knowledge. So they had to get it from somewhere. And it's crazy because everything lines up perfectly with what they brought to the investigators, to what they found at the crime scene and the autopsies and the deaths, the way things went down. It all lined up. And so Ray was charged. Okay, he was indicted on March the 16th of 1999, and his trial was held on February the 28th, and it lasted till March 7th of 2000. And he was 62 at the time of the trial. So, he wasn't a young guy whenever he got put in there. He started serving his two life sentences in prison at the men's prison in Hardwick, Georgia. It was later renamed Baldwin State Prison, but he's now currently serving his sentence at Calhoun State Prison, and which is an all-male facility, and it has a capacity of over 1,600 inmates, and it's located in Morgan, Georgia. He's currently 83 years old at the moment, and it's not like he's going to be around for his parole hearing to come around because, he's already on up there in age. But the sad thing is the family, I just can't imagine what the families had to gone through with living with this horrible case. It's just awful. And Miss Audrey Christine Crew Ulmer, though, that was her name was Audrey. She went by Christine. Her maiden name was Crew, and her married name was Ulmer. So Miss Christine, she was laid to rest at Woodlawn Cemetery in Whigham. And she was put beside her husband that she just absolutely loved and adored, Joe. And JoAnn, she was also laid to rest at the same cemetery in Whigham. And it's just such a sad case because I can't imagine being, in that family and not just losing one, but losing two people in such a horrific and violent way. It's just so sad. So I pray for their families. And even though this case happened a long time ago, it's still fresh in a lot of people's minds. And I've had a lot of people message me about this case. So it's still out there. And I just wanted to let these victims, let their memory live on of how, amazing they were and how awful, people that you think can be. You don't always know people, and you don't know what somebody's capable of. And it's just really sad. Roy he had a plan. He thought he had it all figured out, but he didn't outsmart law enforcement, and he wasn't a very good criminal. So now he is, thankfully, in jail for the rest of his life. And I hope that the families of these victims and the victims may rest in peace and find peace in knowing that he can't hurt anyone else. So I hope you guys have a great day. Love on your babies. Kiss your babies. Love your family. And just don't ever leave without saying that you love the people that you love, because none of us are promised tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great day.